Today I'm going to talk you through the 10 cheapest cars that you can buy that have 700 brake horsepower at least from factory. Now a lot of these cars aren't cheap, that's because 700 brake horsepower is typically reserved for supercars. But if you want 700 brake and you don't want to mod a car specifically, which would be way cheaper to do, then these are the 10 cars that are cheapest to buy. If you want to see the same video again for 600 brake horsepower instead, hit the like button, 1,000 likes and I'll make that video. Subscribe as well if you're new here. 77% of you are not subscribed who are watching this video right now, so make sure you hit subscribe for 2 videos every single week. Let's get straight into it. Front-engined Ferraris do depreciate hard, and though the F12 was 240 grand brand new, over £325,000 adjusted for inflation, now you can get into them starting at just £125,000, where they're typically listed for around the 140k mark. That is, of course, a lot of money, but cheap for 700 brake horsepower, which is thanks to that stunning 6.3 litre V12 engine, which makes 729 brake horsepower to be exact, taking it to 60 in 3 seconds, making it the only naturally aspirated car on this list. The Berlinetta was the successor to the 595 and the predecessor to the 812 Superfast, and is the last of the front mid-engine V12 Ferraris to have been designed with Pininfarina, while it also had input from Scaglietti for the development of the aluminium chassis. It was the most powerful Ferrari road car ever on launch and is exceptionally well equipped from standard, as you'd expect of a Ferrari. Carbon ceramic brakes, an insanely clever suspension setup, and the F1 traction control system that Ferrari like to use, with their Formula 1 knowledge also going into the aerodynamics, with that aero bridge in particular being a key feature. Just know, as it's a Ferrari, it will have Ferrari running costs. Now we have a car that's a bit Marmite in terms of looks, but is absurdly fast for a family Grand Tourer, the Mercedes AMG GT63 S e-Performance, which is surprisingly the only hybrid car on this list. That powertrain is a 4-litre twin turbocharged V8 block combined with electric power to make a whopping 831 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 2.8 seconds. This is the range topper for this GT, and it was the first car to launch under that new Mercedes e-Performance branding. The engine actually makes 630 brake horsepower on its own, and the electric motor does all the rest, and it's actually a plug-in hybrid, even though it'll only manage 12 kilometers in pure EV mode. Even though it's supposed to be a 5-door version of the AMG GT sports car, it's actually more related to the E63 estate with the same chassis. Personally, I prefer the E63, but you can't deny the performance in this. As these are still relatively new, they are pretty pricey still, coming in at 125k bottom end, and you'll find them normally for under 150k. Next up, we have our first of 2 American muscle style cars on this list, the Dodge Challenger SRT Super stock, the most ridiculous version of the Challenger I could find for sale in the UK, though if you're buying one, they weren't actually imported here, so you'll be getting a left-hand drive model only. That's a small price to pay for a 6.2 litre supercharged V8 engine, which makes 807 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 3.6 seconds, which I assume is slower than you'd expect because it can't put all of that power through its rear wheels. It is still pretty expensive, as it's listed for £110,000, but again, for that much brake horsepower standard, it's in the top 10 cheapest cars on the market. This comes from the 3rd generation Challenger, and the Superstock actually handles surprisingly well, despite not being marketed as a fast car around corners as you might expect. You could get these with a rear seat delete as standard for an extra $1, but the main issue of owning one of these is the fuel economy. It is dreadful, with owners talking about single digits. I think the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera is one of the best looking modern day Astons, if not one of the best looking Grand Tourers you can get into right now. Not only does it look good, it's got a pretty insane powertrain, a 5.2 litre twin turbocharged V12 block, which makes 715 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 3.3 seconds, again limited by the fact that it's rear wheel drive. Of course, Superleggera refers to them being lightweight, but also to the brand that helped Aston Martin to build light Grand Tourers in the 60s and 70s. That's reflected in the DBS weighing just under 1,700 kilograms, which is not bad for a luxurious Grand Tourer with an engine of that size in it. That has come from a liberal use of carbon fibre around much of the car, and some of the performance is also helped by that massive front grille to increase cooling. They're listed anywhere from around £110,000, and you'll find them typically for around the 120k mark. Sadly, they have been known for electrical glitches, which is not what you want out of a car at this price. From this list, I would probably have the F12, but its main contender for me would be this, the McLaren 720 S, and McLaren absolutely know how to make a proper supercar. The dihedral doors, the looks outside of that, all the exposed carbon fibre both outside and in, and all the rest, these will forever look like supercars, and they're pretty powerful powerful too, thanks to that 4-litre twin-turbocharged V8 block that makes 709 brake horsepower, taking them to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Having been in one, they really do give you a sense of occasion every time. I feel like they'd be hard to get used to quickly if you had one, even if that's just because of the attention they command. That full carbon fiber tub, the sound of that V8, the famous dashboard that spins around depending on setting, is a seriously aggressive car all in, and that tub actually ended up being used on the Senna, Speedtail and Elva too. These start at around £110,000, you'll find them mostly listed for around 120k. The problem is that some owners have been handed lemons with terrible electrical issues, and the rest, all basically quality control related. So I hope you guys are enjoying this video. If you haven't, do hit the like button and subscribe as well if you're new, and let me know in the comments down below, what is the most powerful car you have ever driven? We've got a bit of a strange and controversial one coming in at number 5, the Lotus Electra R, which actually starts at around £120,000 brand new today with no spec options, yet you can already get 2024 examples listed anywhere from around £107,000, with plenty sitting at around 110k, a pretty decent drop for a new hyper SUV. Regardless, it comes with 2 electric motors putting out 904 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 3 seconds. Not bad for a car that weighs almost 2,700 kilograms. This is the first SUV to have hit the roads from the Lotus brand, typically known for making lightweight track-focused sports cars. They did actually reveal a concept crossover SUV back in 2006 called the APX. The Electra is named after the Hungarian word meaning coming to life, and though it's designed in Warwick, it's produced in Wuhan, China. Now, I'll be honest, as a massive Lotus fan who recently reviewed and thoroughly enjoyed the Emira, this is not for me. The interior is pretty nice and they're obviously rapid, but I wouldn't even be after one if it had a Mercedes badge on it, let alone a Lotus one. From one SUV to another, and a significant drop in price too, with the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT Trackhawk, which might not be quite as quick to 60 as the Lotus, but it does 0.6 seconds slower with more old school power. That's thanks to its 6.2-litre supercharged V8 block, putting out 700 brake horsepower exactly, taking it to 60 in 3.6 seconds. The Trackhawk came with the 4th generation Grand Cherokee, and get some serious kit. This is a proper super SUV, if not a hyper SUV. It got carbon fiber trim all around, massive Brembo brakes, 2,433 kilos of weight, so less than the Lotus, and an aggressive suspension setup to handle the power that the Hemi V8 brings. It's surprisingly unassuming though. In the UK it would stand out due to rarity, but it's still definitely an if you know you know kind of car. These are hard to find in the UK of course, and the only one I could find was listed for £84,000, over 20k cheaper than the Lotus. Sadly, many owners had constant issues early doors, but these issues have been well documented and normally came with warranty fixes. There was always going to be a Tesla on this list, given their literal party piece is their brake horsepower and subsequent 0 to 60, and the Model S Plaid, though pretty uninteresting to me personally, is an absolute rocket ship on wheels. It comes with 3 electric motors putting out, wait for it, 1,020 brake horsepower, which is take it to 60 in 2 seconds. Absolutely insane. Just think, when the Bugatti Veyron came out, it had over 1,000 brake horsepower and was considered to be the most hyper thing to have ever existed, and yet an executive electric car will clap it to 60. Does that make the Model S Plaid a hypercar? In my opinion, no, mostly because hypercars are more than the performance, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. They had the lowest drag coefficient of any production car on release, and they're actually incredibly comfy, even if the interiors are a bit sparse and not in a cool minimalist kind of way. I could only find one for sale, and it was listed for £75,000, which is about £1.3 million cheaper than a Veyron. Main complaints are around the range however, and the repeat performance dropping. Taking second on the list, we have the cheapest combustion engined car you can get into with over 700 brake horsepower, the Bentley Continental GT Supersports from the 2nd generation GT, a car that shares that typical 6-litre twin-turbocharged W12 engine, which makes 700 brake horsepower, taking it to 60 in 3.4 seconds. Pretty respectable when you compare that to the precious metal we've spoken about on this list. I mean, these start at around £73,000 and are typically found for under 80k, meaning you're saving around 50k on the F12 we kicked off this list with. This actually comes as both a coupe and convertible. Pretty cool to have 700 brake horsepower and the top down. The Supersports spec got basically everything Bentley could throw at it, including stuff off of the Continental GT3 R track focused car. It's built more for track performance with better aero, downforce braking and all the rest, with the Alcantara interior really hammering the point home. This isn't a luxury Grand Tourer anymore. It's actually crazy limited too, just 710 were built in total, and personally I do think they look really good compared to other simpler Conti specs. Just watch out for the running costs. Taking the top spot on this list is the Porsche Taycan Turbo S Performance Plus, which makes sense given how much they've depreciated over the past few years, as of course this list has been ordered from the most expensive to least expensive. This car has been lambasted for its depreciation, with examples of Porsche dealerships trying to get rid of them by any means necessary to escape their own depreciation. But the Turbo S Performance Plus is incredibly performant thanks to its its 2 electric motors, which make 750 brake horsepower total, taking it to 60 in 2.7 seconds, making it the second quickest car on the list. You can get these in the 3 different Taycan specs, so personally I'd aim for a Sport Turismo, but the cheapest is the standard saloon liftback style model. Having been in some of these, they are lovely cars outside and in, with a proper Porsche experience. It's just a shame that they don't really have any turbos. Today you're finally starting from around £57,000 from 2020, with plenty being available for under 70k. That's pretty insane when you consider without spec options it was a £142,000 car back in 2020. Main thing to watch out for is depreciation, need I say more. So there you have it, the 10 cheapest cars you can buy with 700 brake horsepower from factory. I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Massive thanks to you guys for watching, as the patrons for their support, and click on screen to see a review of a very cool Grand Tourer.